In some places on Earth, the night sky still feels close. Here, across the wide landscapes of Central Asia, the stars seem almost within reach. For thousands of years, people in these lands have looked upward, sometimes in wonder, sometimes with questions. Some of those questions were written down, lines drawn across parchment, numbers placed beside the movement of stars. Observations slowly became measurement, and measurement became a way to understand the sky. More than 1,000 years ago, scholars from this region began to study the heavens in a new way. Among them was Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. His work helped turn astronomy into mathematics. His ideas traveled far beyond Central Asia. Carried along the Silk Road, others followed. Among them, the astronomer al-Farghani, whose writings describe the structure of the cosmos and the size of the Earth with remarkable precision for his time. Their ideas crossed deserts and mountains, not by rockets, but by books. Centuries later, the search for the cosmos reached Samarkand. Here, the ruler and astronomer Ulugh Beg built an observatory unlike anything the world had seen. With it, astronomers measured the positions of nearly 1,000 stars. And then, silence. For centuries, nothing moved, until the 20th century. The return to the cosmos began with fire, rocket launch. In the middle of the 20th century, on the vast steppes of Kazakhstan, the Soviet Union built the world's first spaceport, Baikonur Cosmodrome. From here, in 1957, a small metal sphere changed the course of history. Sputnik, the first artificial satellite ever placed into orbit around the Earth. Just 4 years later, Baikonur would send the first human into space, Yuri Gagarin. His flight lasted only 108 minutes, but it marks the beginning of a new chapter in human history. For decades, the road to space passed through a single place, Baikonur. But the geography of space is changing. Across Central Asia, a new generation of space programs is beginning to emerge. Countries that once watched the space age from the ground are now beginning to build their own path into orbit. One of those stories begins here, in Uzbekistan. For centuries, people here looked at the sky to understand the world. Today, they are using it to change it. In 2019, Uzbekistan established its national space agency, Uzcosmos. For a country that had never operated a space institution before, the task was not simply to launch satellites, it was to build an entire system from the ground up.
That decision essentially marked the beginning of the space industry in Uzbekistan. At that time, there were many questions. The media, the public, even government institutions were asking, what exactly will this agency do? Does Uzbekistan really need a space program?
At the beginning, there were few specialists and little infrastructure. The challenge was not only technological, it was also a question of priorities. Why should a developing country invest in space?
5 years of our activities in the space agency, from scratch when we started it in 2020 when this team was formed. This is actually the 5th year, a full 5 years of our activities. We can openly say that we've passed so-called stage 1, deformation of the industry. If you look back, you can see that space agency, generally the space industry of Uzbekistan, we started from finding ourselves, right? In this high competitive world with such a big players and a very difficult situation, it was very tough to understand where the space in Uzbekistan should be and why actually we should be doing this space, because as an emerging countries we have a lot of different problems to be faced in the social and economical sectors. But even though our president has signed this decree of opening this space agency, which was truly strategically strong vision. And after this 5 years, we can say that this decision was totally right.
One of the first things we did was to turn to our neighbors and our friends. Among them was Azerbaijan. At that time, the head of Azercosmos welcomed us very warmly. They shared their experience with us and explained what mistakes should be avoided, especially for a developing country.
In Uzbekistan, the space program did not begin with rockets. It began with data. Satellite imagery allows scientists to observe the country in a completely different way, from above, across deserts, cities, and farmland.
What we have achieved so far, the space has become the real part of our life, daily life. There is none of the governmental entity which doesn't know what is the space, why the space should be used. And when we're talking about the space, it's not about the astronaut or the satellites. We are talking about the data. We are talking about the help which space can deliver to us, to our common people, to economical industries.
Uzbekistan is one of the most heavily irrigated agricultural countries in the world. In this dry region, water is everything. Nearly 90% of the country's water resources are used by agriculture. Managing land and water at this scale requires constant monitoring, and that monitoring increasingly comes from space.
For example, in agricultural fields, we are working on classification and constantly monitoring of the crops like wheat and cotton, which is directly helping to the country, to the agriculture ministry, to see, to forecast and to act on a different level of speed in a country with an increasing problem with the water as a supply. And you see that 90% of water is used in agriculture. We need to be very careful with this one. For this, he cannot use devices to count how much water is delivered. The only way is to use different technologies. And we presented the space data as alternative source of information.
We are in Tashkent, inside the Uzcosmos building. On this floor, different branches of cartography come together in one space. Specialists here work with satellite maps for seismology, ecology, geology, forestry, landscape analysis, land use, and water management. These maps are used to monitor land changes, verify construction dates, assess environmental risks, and manage natural resources. In a country like Uzbekistan, where water and land are both critical, accurate mapping is essential. Satellite imagery turns what happens on the ground into data that can be measured, monitored, and planned for.
From above, these changes appear as patterns. On the ground, they can mean loss or survival.
I use satellite data to transform complex space technologies into robust, practical solutions. I specifically am currently working on evapotranspiration modeling for water management and agriculture.
We always look for such kind of opportunities in space sector where Uzbekistan can become like a technological developed country. We could also start our space program with launching satellites, installing ground stations with the infrastructure, for example, here. But we saw a really good opportunity in space applications where we can use the space data, analyze it, process it, and to bring value-added products into the market, into the government.
Uzbekistan is one of the youngest societies in Central Asia. More than 60% of its population is under the age of 30. In recent years, universities across the country have opened new engineering and technology programs. For many students, space technology is no longer something distant.
Here in Uzbekistan, we involve mostly youth for all these events, and we are also organizing a lot of events for them as well. For example, I can mention the project of CANSAT, UNISAT, which is like developing small satellites together with the youth, involving as well as the young girls.
One of our flagship projects is the CANSAT program. We have trained more than 500 young people from across Uzbekistan free of charge. From them, 120 participants reached the final stage and launched their own small CANSAT satellites on rockets.
For years, space here was about observation, about data, about solving problems on Earth. But now it is beginning to look beyond it.
The president announced that we will start to work on the astronaut program. It will be like a first national Uzbek astronaut, and then as well as our Earth observation satellite constellations.
For a country that once watched others reach space, the idea of sending its own astronaut carries a different weight. It is not only a technological step, it is a moment of arrival. But not every country in this region started at the same point. Some began earlier. Azerbaijan was one of them. Long before space became a regional trend, it had already placed its first satellite into orbit. Today, Azerbaijani satellites operate across a wide geography, reaching Europe, the Middle East, Central Asia, and Africa.
Azerbaijan's space program entered an institutional phase back in 2010. Since then, Azercosmos has been operating as the Caucasian region's first satellite operator, delivering telecommunication and Earth observation services for more than a decade. From controlling satellites in orbit to managing the data they send back to Earth, everything is handled from this center. This is the core of Azerbaijan's real working space infrastructure.
Operating a satellite is a continuous process. Every movement is calculated, every position is monitored. Even the smallest shift in orbit can change how signals are received on the ground.
As a flight dynamics engineer, we need to answer 3 questions in a daily basis. First one is, where is the satellite right now? Where is the satellite going to be in the near future? And the third main question is, what are we going to do about it? There are a lot of other satellites in the orbit, and also there are some space debris. Some satellites collide and, let's say, explode into many small parts, and these are also a collision risk. So we take account the position of our satellite, so we can calculate the risk of collision. If it's necessary, we do small maneuvers in order to move the satellite just a little, so it moves out of the path of that debris to avoid the collision.
In just a few years, Azerbaijan built the foundation of its space capabilities. 3 national satellites launched between 2013 and 2018.
The modern space journey of independent Azerbaijan began in 2008. The launch of Azerspace 1 in 2013 marked a new stage in our space industry, which was followed by Azersky in 2014 and Azerspace 2 in 2018. These achievements created a strong foundation for developing human capital within the sector.
For countries like Azerbaijan, space is not only about technology, it is about control. Control over communication, control over data.
We see that more and more nations, they want to be very sovereign when it comes to provide their own services. Actually, how it started for Azerbaijan to implement its first space program. The aim was to ensure our independence when it comes to deliver news, Azerbaijani content and data in Azerbaijan, and also to the global market.
Satellite infrastructure has become part of national resilience, invisible in everyday life. but critical when it matters most. The global space economy is expanding rapidly, from around $400 billion today to more than $1 trillion in the next decade. Azerbaijan is positioning itself within this growth. But Azerbaijan's space program is not limited to national needs. It has also become part of the global market.
Over the last 15 years, our government has invested more than 600 million USD in space programs, and about 95% of that investment has already returned. While Azerbaijan was essentially an end user of third-party satellite solutions, for decades, we are now implementing our national space strategy with the ambition of localizing space technologies and developing a national ecosystem.
If you look at the figures, currently we collaborate more than 50 countries and more than 200 companies globally. And we are a very international oriented organization because more than 80% of those services are being generated, actually the revenues are being generated outside of Azerbaijan.
Signals from the Caspian now travel far beyond the region. But space is not only about what happens above the Earth, it is also about understanding what happens below it.
One of the key milestones for Azerbaijan was the launch of the Azer Sky Earth observation satellite in 2014. This gave Azerbaijan access to high-resolution satellite imagery and the ability to obtain data from almost anywhere on the planet on a continuous basis. In Azerbaijan, we use satellite technologies across a wide range of environmental monitoring projects. We monitor water resources, air quality, and forest ecosystems, and satellite imagery also allows us to detect and track wildfires. The Caspian Sea itself is monitored as a separate research object.
Behind every satellite, there is a new generation. Engineers, researchers, students.
Space Academy operating under Azercosmos, accepted as the 13th Space Academy in the world actually. This year we are celebrating 12,000 alumni graduation of our different programs. The major aim of establishment of the Space Academy of Azercosmos was to support the development process of the space ecosystem in Azerbaijan. Just a couple of weeks ago, Azerbaijani school children celebrated the first ever in the history launch of the Pocket Cube satellite, IoT satellite of school children. It has been launched by the SpaceX Falcon 9 with the support of the Brazilian Space Agency.
The next step is clear. Moving from operating satellites to building them, Azerbaijan's space program is also becoming part of a wider regional system.
We can look back and see on the functioning and the operation of the Organization of Turkic States and see its transition from merely a political union to a more practical and operational system with its projects, with its legal documents. The one that I can mention is the Turkic World Vision 2040, which outlined the exact projects, including our domain, namely space domain.
Azerbaijan's space program is now connected to a much larger system, a global space community.
74th IEC, which was held in Baku, hosted 5,500 delegates from 132 countries. And at the time, it was the highest participation in terms of diversification of numbers of countries. The Congress in Baku was the first time the astronauts chapter was launched, and it brought together more than 20 astronauts who were in Baku and traveling from school to universities, from universities to youth centers.
In just over a decade, Azerbaijan has built a functioning space sector, from orbit to ground, from data to global services.
In this series, we have already traveled across the region from Uzbekistan to Azerbaijan, exploring how countries are building their presence in space. Now we are in Turkey, widely seen as the most advanced space sector in the region. Over the past decade, the country has launched new satellites, sent its first astronaut to the International Space Station, and begun developing its own space technologies. But beyond the headlines, the real question is how this growing space program is shaping Turkey's role in the region.
Turkey's space program did not emerge overnight. It has developed step by step, evolving from basic satellite operations into a more complex national system. The first phase began with communication satellites. In 1994, Turksat 1B was launched, followed by new generations in the years that followed. At that stage, the goal was simple: to build independent communication infrastructure. The next step was Earth observation. Satellites such as Bilsat, Raysat, and later Göktürk-2 marked a shift toward domestic technological capability. In simple terms, Turkey moved from being a user of space services to a country capable of designing and developing its own systems.
Turkey's space program has reached a turning point. We are no longer just using space technologies, we are now developing and producing them. This shift represents a new phase where Turkey is becoming a country that builds its own capabilities in space.
At TÜBİTAK Space, we act as the main system engineer and manufacturer throughout the entire satellite lifecycle, from the initial planning phase to design, production, testing, and commissioning. We are involved in every stage. This means we are not only developing technologies, but building complete satellite systems. A satellite is an extremely complex system. It includes more than 10 subsystems and close to 1,000 individual components. All of these must work together in perfect harmony. If even one component fails, the entire system can stop functioning. And in space, there is no possibility for repair.
But building satellites is only part of the story.
Beyond the technical achievements, one of the most important outcomes has been public awareness. Space is no longer a distant concept in Turkey, it is becoming part of the national mindset. Through astronaut missions and outreach, we are inspiring a new generation to engage with science and technology.
This transformation is not only technological, it is also societal. This shift is already visible in the scale of Turkey's space ambitions. The country's capabilities have expanded rapidly in recent years. With more than 80% of its latest communication satellite built domestically, Turkey is now among a small group of nations able to produce its own systems. From satellites operating just a few hundred kilometers above Earth, to ambitions reaching nearly 400,000 kilometers to the Moon, the scale of these projects is rapidly expanding.
One of the key goals of our national space program is the Moon mission. We are developing our own spacecraft and propulsion systems. This will allow us to gain critical technologies for future deep space missions.
Reaching the Moon is a completely different engineering challenge. It requires managing a spacecraft over hundreds of thousands of kilometers far beyond low Earth orbit. But this is exactly the kind of capability we are building.
Mühendislik problemini çözebilecek yetkinlikte, uzmanlığı var.
Since childhood, my dream was always to fly. But that dream had a limit, and that limit was the sky. When I was younger, whenever space came up, I would tell myself, This is not our dream, it belongs to other nations. What changed is that for the first time, that path has now been opened.
Filmlerde uzayla ilgili bir şey geçtiğinde bütün ülkemizi dolaşıp
From now on, one of my main goals is to travel across Turkey and meet young people face to face. I want them to see that this path is now open, that this is no longer an unreachable dream. It is something they can aim for themselves.
geziyor olacağız.
For many, space is still about inspiration, about what it makes people feel, but turning that inspiration into something tangible requires more than ambition. It requires systems, infrastructure, and technologies that operate quietly every single day.
While much of the attention around space focuses on astronauts and exploration, a large part of the space economy actually operates much closer to Earth. Here in Turkey, one of the key institutions behind that infrastructure is Turksat. Today, the company operates 6 communication satellites in orbit, delivering satellite television, broadband and secure communications across the vast region, stretching from Europe to Africa and deep into Asia. Through this network, Turksat connects millions of users and plays a central role in Turkey's growing space ecosystem.
Turksat şu anda 6 tane haberleşme uydusu işletiyor.
We currently operate 6 communication satellites across 3 different orbital positions. Through these satellites, we provide broadcasting and data services across a very wide geographical region. Today, more than 530 television channels are broadcast through Turksat satellites, including channels from Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Africa, and even the Far East.
Uzak Doğu kanalları var.
These satellites form the backbone of Turkey's communication infrastructure, connecting millions of users across continents.
Herhangi bir deprem anında mevcut
During the recent earthquake in Türkiye, when terrestrial infrastructure was damaged, satellite communication became essential. We deployed around 800 satellite terminals in the affected areas to help people reconnect with their families and access communication services.
Yapmaya çalıştık.
In critical moments, space is no longer invisible. It becomes essential. With more than 80% of Turksat 6A built domestically, Türkiye is now among a limited number of countries capable of producing its own communication satellites.
İlk ihracatımızı Turksat 6A üzerinden de yaptık.
We have already completed our first export through Turksat 6A. In a highly competitive market, we are now successfully providing services in regions such as Asia.
Bu şekilde hizmet veriyor durumdayız.
But space in Türkiye is no longer only about systems in orbit or connections on Earth. It is also about how the country positions itself in the global space landscape. In 2026, that shift will take a visible form as Türkiye prepares to host the International Astronautical Congress in Antalya, a gathering where the future of space is not only discussed but shaped. But for Türkiye, this is more than a global gathering.
International Astronautical Congress is a key platform where all major actors in the space industry come together. We do not see this event as just an organisation. We see it as an opportunity, a platform where we can present what we have achieved so far and build new partnerships for the future. Greater international visibility will help build trust, and that trust can turn into investment.
In some places, the night sky still feels close, but today, it is no longer only observed. Across this region, the questions once written in ink are now being answered in orbit. What began with observation has become engineering. What once traveled by books now moves through satellites. And as this transformation continues, countries across this region are no longer only looking at the sky, they are becoming part of it.